Okay, so here's the thing that as a partner of someone who has CPTSD, it's going to be helpful for you to know. When someone is in a CPTSD spiral, they don't know that they're behaving badly most of the time. They believe that they are behaving in a way that will protect them because they don't feel safe. And for you to say that he's using CPTSD as an excuse is it tells me that you're really hurt right now. You might be invalidating his own traumatic experience, which is only going to serve to drive a further wedge between you. Um, I don't know what his relational trauma is. Of course, this is the only comment you left me, so I don't really have a ton of context. But I'm going to give you a hypothetical. If he was perhaps traumatized as a child, if his parents or his caretakers criticized him a lot growing up, that could create CPTSD. If his parents yelled at him a lot, that could create CPTSD. If his parents hit him or physically abused him, that could create that CPTSD. And all three of those things, even if they were just highly critical, it could lead him to having his CPTSD triggered when you try to hold him accountable. Because holding him accountable might feel like criticism to him, which then triggers his CPTSD in full blast. Then he stops feeling safe in the relationship, and it can explain why he might have told you that he felt that you were scaring him or that you were being cruel. It's not to say that you are being cruel, but that's the way it feels to him. And as somebody with CPTSD, I can tell you that when I'm in a CPTSD spiral or when I'm experiencing a trigger to my CPTSD, my truth is the only one that I'm willing to consider until I calm down. And the reason for that is because I'm so afraid and my body is trying to tell me, or my brain and body are trying to tell me that I'm in danger, that I will do anything I can to stay safe in that moment. I don't think that he's treating you poorly or acting out because he doesn't love you. He probably wouldn't have married you if he didn't love you, or didn't value you. But when he is in a CPTSD trigger, he feels so afraid that his survival becomes paramount. It's also important to note that if he has CPTSD that's related to a childhood wound, when we have our childhood traumas triggered from our CPTSD, we often regress back to the mental processing capacity of that age that we were at when we experienced that trauma. For me, for example, I have a couple ages that I tend to regress back to when I'm experiencing my CPTSD triggers. One is I regress back to 6 years old. And then one is I regress back to like 13. So I either become a toddler or I become a teenager full of hormones, right? A really rebellious teenager. But those kinds of behaviors can come up in me and create what you're calling quote unquote bad behavior. But I think it's really important to note when you're using the term bad behavior, that's something that a mother would say to a child to discipline them. And when you're talking to your husband that way, it may make sense to why, if he had childhood trauma like that, to why he would feel scared by you and why he would feel that you're being cruel to him, because he is his nervous system. He's not consciously doing this. Usually when you have CPTSD, you're not usually consciously aware of the ways in which you are projecting your trauma onto the people in your life, but he is probably projecting his childhood trauma, if he has it, onto you. Again, I don't know if this is his trauma or not because I don't have the context to know what his history is, but I hope that this exercise was helpful for you to try and like look at it from the perspective of the idea that his trauma is probably running his show right now. CPTSD is really insidious and it's very difficult to heal and deal with, and especially if you have relational trauma. So I hope that this will help you find a little bit more compassion for him when he is in a trauma spiral, so that way you don't take it on as personally yourself too, because it can feel like such deep rejection for partners of those people with CPTSD when the people who have CPTSD aren't treating them with love and consideration because they're in a spiral that they can't even think about anybody else but their own survival and their own safety. And it can really leave the non-CPTSD partner feeling really left out and rejected. So if you can come to a place where you can see the ways, like the ways in which his CPTSD was caused and the ways in which your behavior might even very loosely mimic that cause, because that's the way our triggers work in our nervous system. Our nervous system creates triggers in a wide net to equate even something that is very distantly related to the trauma we experienced in order to protect us and help us protect ourselves from future danger. So even if you don't see how it might apply to his trauma, try to be really broad and be like, could this potentially be something that has triggered his trauma? That's something I said or whatever. And if you don't know, ask him. But then you have to take his word for it. If he says, yeah, you really scared me, instead of taking that personally and being like, but I'm not a scary person. Of course you're not a scary person, but he has CPTSD. So you might ask him, okay, well, what is it that scared you that I did or said? Let's talk about it. I want to make sure that you feel safe in this relationship, right? It's not impossible to have a relationship that's loving and kind and caring and compassionate and super fulfilling with someone who has CPTSD. I know because I have CPTSD and my partner does not. And we have a great relationship that's really beautifully built on trust and safety. And he's so empathetic and so kind and caring. And also, he's prepared now, knowing that I have CPTSD. He's become more trauma informed and he's prepared for when I am acting out in my CPTSD and in my fear. And he knows how to handle me now, as it were. Is it fair to him that he has to become my handler sometimes? No, but he chose to love me. And if he wants to be in relationship with me, this is what it comes with. I can't apologize for the trauma that happened to me. I can't be sad or sorry for the fact that I'm a traumatized person. All I can do is try my best to be better every day and to try to show up for him in ways that he needs when I'm having a CPTSD spiral, and ask for what I need from him and be really clear about that when I'm in a CPTSD spiral. But that took years of becoming more consciously aware of what my patterns and cycles are and what my needs are in relationship. Now, we weren't in therapy because I did all that work on my own before I met him. So I wasn't in a relationship setting, and I wasn't in couples counseling with him and those things. So I was doing it all on my own. But I do think that when you're in a relationship, you can learn those things so much faster, especially if you're in couples counseling. So I hope this was helpful to you. And if you have any more context you'd like to give me in the comments, I'd love to hear it. And then maybe I'll have a little bit better advice to give if that's what you're looking for. Okay.